On Monday, the Department of Justice filed a lawsuit challenging Texas Republicans' plan for redrawing congressional and state legislative districts. The suit alleges the state's new maps violate the Voting Rights Act because they discriminate against voters in the state's booming Latino and black populations.
As the Supreme Court has observed, a core principle of our democracy is that, quote, voters should choose their representatives, not the other way around.
The state's attorney general firing back on Twitter, calling the suit absurd, adding he is confident that our legislators' redistricting decisions will be proven lawful, and this preposterous attempt to sway democracy will fail. According to the DOJ, Texas has grown in population by 4 million people over the last decade, and that 95% of that growth is in black, Latino, and Asian populations. The state was allocated 2 more congressional seats after the 2020 census, but did not draw a single new district with a majority of black or Hispanic voters. Instead, the 2 new seats have white voting majorities.
Woohoo! Isn't that stunning? Isn't that disgusting? So that's gerrymandering. That's what gerrymandering looks like. This is what the Supreme Court was able to do when they gutted the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and they took out the pre-clearance requirement, meaning if you were going to gerrymander districts this way, you had to, actually get pre-cleared to draw your maps. Well, that's all gone. It's out the window. It's gone because, you had a Supreme Court, you had a Roberts say, oh, racism is over. So here is proof that the GOP, A, hates its voters, hates its constituents, and really hates non-white people, even though in my best guesstimate, Hispanics are white. 4 million people either moved into or now live in Texas in 2020 than did in Texas in 2010, right? Over the last 10 years, there's been an increase in Texas population of 4 million. Of those 4 million, 95% of them are black, Hispanic, and Asian residents. And when it was time for them to draw their districts in Texas, they gave exactly 0 districts to anybody but white majorities. That's it. That's what they did. Population growth driven by almost entirely black and Hispanic residents, and they draw districts that literally packed those residents into tight little districts so that they would be, they put them into Republican districts so that they would have no power. They would have no say in who they wanted to have represent them. Now, Texas literally, because the population growth was so huge, Texas literally created 2 new congressional districts. They had 36. It's a huge delegation, the Texas delegation, right? And you need to remember that next time we talk about voting and leaving it up to Congress, right? Because it's every state gets 1 vote. Every state gets 1 vote. So Texas had 36 members of its delegation, House seats. Now it's got 38, and 0 of them have black or Hispanic or black and Hispanic majorities in them. It's sick and it's sad and it's easy to see.
The newly enacted redistricting plans will not allow minority voters an equal opportunity to elect representatives of their choice.
The new redrawn districts were signed into law by Governor Greg Abbott this fall and pave a safer path for the GOP's majority to stay in power. Democratic State Rep Ramon Ramiro says the new maps hit his own district near Fort Worth hard.
Once you saw the new district, what did it do to you?
I went from a 50% Latino surname voter registration to a 38% Latino surname voter registration.
Oh my God.
It's part of a national wave of states redrawing their voting maps, many controlled by Republican lawmakers. That could impact next year's midterm elections and those for years to come. And right now, the DOJ is asking the courts to prohibit Texas from conducting elections under these challenge plans. And they're also asking the courts to make sure these maps are redrawn.
Okay, so this is why we need the Freedom to Vote Act. This is why we need the legislation to pass. And of course, it's not passing. It passed the House. It's stuck in the Senate. Joe Manchin, yes, Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, Democrats both, aren't all interested in carving out constitutionally protected rights from having to have a supermajority of 60 votes under the filibuster rule, right? There is no way you're going to find 10 Republicans who are all about voting rights. Okay, there's no way. So the only way to get this piece of voting rights legislation enacted is if the filibuster rule doesn't apply to voting rights. I don't think the filibuster rule ought to apply to any constitutional right. I don't think it ought to apply to privacy rights. I don't think it ought to apply to voting rights. I don't think it ought to apply to freedom of speech. Honestly. But they won't even carve out a space for the voting rights legislation to pass without needing, 10 Republican votes. And as long as that's the case, it isn't going to pass. And yesterday at that press conference, while it was really boring on such an exciting topic, Garland actually told Congress, I need you to pass this voting legislation so that we can restore the Voting Rights Act, the part of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 that required jurisdictions with history of discrimination to clear election changes through the Justice Department before they enact them. If you don't vote on voting rights, I don't have that authority to do that anymore. And these maps will have to be fought in courts across this country every time they gerrymander or dilute Black and Hispanic voters' power to vote. And I don't see any movement on the voting thing. I just don't. I really, and even when they write articles now, it's so creepy. When they write articles about the amount of work that the Senate has to do before Christmas, right? They talk about Build Back Better, and they talk about the debt limit, right? We're going to exceed our ability to borrow on December 15th. And they have to pass that. And the Defense Authorization Act, right, to fund the military. They talk about all this stuff that has to get going, but they don't even mention the voting rights bill anymore. I don't even see it as a thing to do. And it's freaking me out. Because now they're coming forward with their maps that, are drawing new districts. And I'm telling you, it's an election year in just what? What is today? Today is the 7th. It's an election year in 3 weeks. In 3 weeks, we enter into an election year. And things are good. You'd never know it, though. You would never, ever know it. If it's the economy, stupid, that you're voting on, things are good. I would vote for the Democrats who actually fixed what was broken after COVID. I mean, Joe Biden makes no big deal about solving the supply chain issue, which was humongous. You had every Fox freak on their show saying, oh, the shelves are empty in my supermarket, as if Lala Ingraham has set her Manolos on Publix or Winn-Dixie's or even D'Agostino's, floor. She's never been in a supermarket. They deliver her groceries. Trust me. My shelves are empty. Liars. All of them. Liars. And the idea that the gas prices are coming down. Literally, they're coming down. It's about $3.30 here. California, yours came down about 50 cents a gallon. Production is up. Biden was able to talk to, they made so much profit. The oil and gas companies did $174 billion, by the way. $174 billion profit in 9 months. How'd they do that? They charged you more. That's what they did. Don't have time to listen to the live show? Want to hear more on your schedule? Go to RandiRhodes.com and buy a stinking podcast.